All right, well, we'll get started because I want to make sure that we keep on track for timing wise, because I'm sure everyone's busy. So once again, thank you everybody for coming to these conference sessions. And for those who came on Saturday, thank you for that as well. We had a really good attendance, so it was really good to see everybody, and I hope everyone got something out of that. Now, just a reminder, if we can make sure that we mute our microphones. If you don't want to be on the recording, because we are recording them, I'll just make sure that your video is disabled as well. Now, if we can all hold questions until the end this time, you can use the chat function, and Belinda and myself will attempt to answer as we go. And if not, we'll get Monika to follow up on any loose questions that we haven't been able to put through. So on that, I will hand over to Monika. Thank you. I'll just stop sharing this screen too for you. Oh. There we go. You should be good to go now, Monika.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. Now I'm just going to attempt to share my screen and hopefully everything will work. I'm not sure that that's actually showing.
I can see it on mine.
You can see it on yours. Can you see it?
I can see it on both of mine.
Excellent. Is it a slideshow?
I can see the first slide and the next slide.
Yeah, that's what I. That's not quite what we wanted. Sorry, guys. And we did a crash course.
We did. We did do a test.
Sorry.
You're right.
Not quite sure what's going on.
I know in the end Pamela ended up doing hers like that.
Come on. Sorry, I can't get it to work.
If you're okay with putting it up like it was last time, that's probably fine. Where you had the two.
Let's have a go at that one. Does that look better?
That's
Perfect.
it. Yep.
Yay. There we go. Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for joining today's session. Today we're going to be talking about capturing your brilliance, and obviously professional development is about capturing your brilliance. Professional development is an activity that as trainers and assessors we obviously all need to do. So what I'd like to do before we get into the session is actually tell you a little bit about me. So my name is Monika and I'm a compliance analyst, and I'm sure you're all looking at me going, what does a compliance analyst actually do? I look after different registered training organisations. I have a look at the standards for registered training organisations and RTO's policies and processes, and make sure that they're all doing the right thing, and if not, we can help move forward, we can help develop. I've had 20 years of experience in the industry. My background is training and education and logistics, so I started my life off actually as a motor mechanic, believe it or not, but I then moved on to logistics and did my traineeships. From there I discovered that I really had a great passion for learning, and I just wanted to keep learning. So I went forward and became a lecturer's assistant at TAFE, and then from there it's all history, and here we are. So I specialise in language literacy and numeracy delivery, and also specialise in professional development programs. So any sort of gaps that we find that trainers may have, you know, if they want to learn about personality profiles, or they want to look at facilitation skills or presentation skills, that is something that I can come in and help put together a program that's just suited for them. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's move forward and let me see whether I can get this technology to work. So, what is professional development? So, professional development is any activity that helps to develop or maintain an individual's skills or knowledge, expertise, and other characteristics as a trainer and assessor. So when we normally talk about professional development, most people think to themselves, oh, I've got to go and do a course, or I've got to go and learn something new, learn some facilitation skills, or I've got to do a webinar and things like that. But professional development is also about reading, being part of an association or an industry network. It can be formal or informal. And I think a lot of the times all we seem to think about is the formal activities, whereas the informal activities are also something that is very important. Now, professional development does encompass vocational competencies, the currency of industry skills and knowledge, and the practice of vocational training, so the learning and the actual assessment. And it's including competency-based training and assessment. So we've got a couple of parts to professional development. So you have professional development in terms of the qualification or the skills and the knowledge that you may currently hold. So that could be a Certificate 3 in basket weaving, for example, because that's the first one that pops in my head. Or it could be that you hold a unit of competency for, driving a boat or driving a car, or surf rescue or something like that. So they're your vocational competencies. The other part is also the currency of your industry skills and knowledge. Because as we all know, the industry or the companies, policies, procedures, the way we do things keep moving. So what we need to have a look at the currency. So if we did a Certificate 3 15 years ago, and we haven't actually worked in the industry, we would expect that that Certificate 3 may not necessarily be current. So currency in the industry is really important. Now, that doesn't mean that you actually need to, so for me in logistics, I'm sure that no one would allow me to go back into their warehouse and drive their forklift if I haven't driven one for several years. But industry currency can be done in many ways. It can be done through industry associations. It can be also done through having a look at new products, new things that are out on the market. The third part that exists is the vocational training, learning and assessment. So these are your actual skills in your training and assessment, so your delivery and your assessment. These are really, really important. And you're going to say, why are they really, really important? If I know how to train someone, I know how to train someone. We keep finding new ways of delivering training. And one of the reasons for that is that our learner cohort, so the people that we actually train and assess, do change. So we always don't have a class where everyone is in their 20s or everyone is in their 30s or everyone is in their 40s. We always have a mixture. So it's really important that we keep our training and assessment skills, or our learning and assessment skills, up to date, because our learner cohorts do change. And I'm sure that in your industry, they change quite regularly. Now, the other reason why we capture professional development is, why not? If you've taken the time to develop yourself, learn something new, get some new skills, or even expand your knowledge, why don't we capture it? You've bothered to dedicate your time, so let's put it down on paper. And we all know that when we do these different types of activities, we don't always get a certificate, or we don't always get some sort of a piece of paper that says we actually did it. So one of the great ways of capturing this, especially if it's not directly at work, is to put it down in a professional development register. I'll show you what one looks like in a minute. Now, some of the informal activities that you can look at doing would be hobbies. If you've got hobbies that you enjoy doing, or you're learning a new hobby or something like that, if it can be related to your work, put it down on your professional development register. Also reading. A lot of people enjoy reading. They may read journals, they may read guidelines, they may read policies and procedures. A really quick way sometimes to get yourself to go to sleep, but a lot of us do enjoy reading policies and procedures. A lot of people learn by watching how-to videos on YouTube. And we'll go through some generations shortly, and I'll explain to you about some of the how-to videos on YouTube. Sometimes promotional material, or we will get material about new equipment or a new way of doing things. That is all professional development. If you've taken the time to read it and you've taken the time to take it on board, let's capture it. All right. The other reasons why we also capture it is that we're required to. The standards for registered training organisations say that we need to capture professional development. Now, you might say, standards, what do I need to know about standards? Every RTO that has trainers and assessors working for them need to capture their professional development. Okay, and like I said before too, you will have different students, you'll have people that come from different cultures, different backgrounds in your classes. So when we have a look at professional development, have a look at some of these things. I'm going to show you some things. So let's have a look at part of professional development. Why and how do adults learn? Now, I understand that all of your classes don't consist of all adults. You may have some young adults, you may have some teenagers, and you also may have some older adults. So adult learning principles is something that we're all taught as part of our certificate for our presentation skills, but I think sometimes it's worthwhile having a look at some of these. So as part of your professional development, we have the principles of adult learning. So adults are autonomous and self-directed. So what does that actually mean? It means that adults like to be in control of their own learning. I'm sure everyone can remember the time when we used to be at school and you'd come into the classroom and the teacher would say to you, okay, sit down, we're going to do maths, or we're going to do reading, or get out your book, I'm going to write some stuff on the blackboard or the whiteboard, and you're going to copy it down, and this is how we're going to learn. Adults, we like to be in control of our own learning. We like to be actively involved in learning and work around our specific interests and personal goals. The other one that we also have is adults have accumulated a foundation of life experiences and knowledge. So this can include work-related activities like family responsibilities, previous formal and informal education, self-interest, and hobbies. Adults are goal-orientated. So they want to learn and they want to attain a goal. Most people, when they go into learning, especially as adults, they will go in with a goal. I want to go in and I want to finish this certificate 3 in basket weaving. Or they'll go in and say, look, I want to learn this new hobby because it interests me. Or I want to finish reading this book. Adults are relevancy orientated. Now, what that actually means is they need to see a reason for learning something. And when we go through our generations, you'll also see that some of our younger generations also are relevancy orientated. They don't want us to tell them all the things that they need to know because they have access to the internet, they have an access to a wealth of information, and they will tell you that they will go and learn it just before they need to use it. Now, I believe that Albert Einstein said the art of true greatness, or the knowledge, is not knowing all the information, but actually knowing where to find it. And that's what our youngsters are doing. They're going out and they're finding the information. They don't actually want to sit in class and be talked at. The other part is that adults are actually practical. They like to be able to apply their knowledge. So, a lot of the times when we used to go to school, or we have done certain formal training and informal training, we don't actually get to do a practical. So a really important thing about principles of adult learning is for adults to have some information, here's some knowledge, now let's go and put it into practical. They like to be able to apply their knowledge, and the learning must be useful to them. And the last one is that adults, as with all learners, must be shown respect. The thing about adults, as we all know, is that we bring considerable life experience and we like to be treated as equals. We like to voice our opinions and have a role in directing our own learning. So, having said all that and the adult learning principles, let me help muddy the water a little bit more, and I'm going to introduce you to the 5 generations that are currently working side by side in 2020. So I found this picture because I thought it would be a great representation, especially for the people that are visual in this. So at the moment in the workplace, we would still have some traditionalists, which are the generation that was born between 1990 and 1945. So this generation has been exposed to the Great Depression, World War II. They are very disciplined disciplined, they're very workplace loyal. So you'll find that these people that have worked in the workplace may have stayed in the same job for the last 38, 45, 50 and 60 years, whereas that doesn't seem to happen nowadays. They also moved to the burbs, or the suburbs as we would call it, and they were part of the big vaccination push, which I thought was quite relevant at the time, at the moment. Our next generation is the baby boomers. So the baby boomers are 1946 to 1964, and for the ones that are following along, some of these dates do vary, and there is research to say that, you know, these years can go on either side by 2, 3, 4 years. So these seem to be the most common generational dates, so I've run with these guys. So baby boomers are goal-orientated. They can be quite competitive, resourceful, mentally focused, disciplined, and also team-focused. So they have grown up in a world of more discipline, limited education, and went into the workforce at an early age. So these are the guys that have been through Vietnam, the moon landing, the civil and women's rights, the experimental, the innovators, the hardworking, and also, for some of them, the personal computer. Now, how do these guys like to learn? Because no doubt you'll have them in your class. They prefer in-class participation, they like reflection, and they also like feedback. They have little time for theory learning, and they prefer to be shown by a technical expert, and they want to ask questions. Now, this is the really interesting thing. Their concentration time is approximately 1.5 hours. So if you get these guys in the classroom, if you can keep them engaged in terms of having some theory and then also having some practical, they will be concentrating for at least 1.5 hours. So our next generation is Generation X. Okay, my generation, I can say that. They were born between 1965 and 1976. Sometimes the date will be extended out to 1979. So these guys were around, well, during the fall of the Berlin Wall. We're talking about the Gulf War. They're very independent, free agents. They've been exposed, obviously, to the internet, MTV, AIDS, and the mobile phone. They are very resourceful problem solvers who have a distaste for touchy-feely teaching methods. They are competent with technology and are the first generation of the more highly educated. They are reliant on IT systems to do their work, and they question processes and challenge authority. However, they do respect expertise when the expert is actually creditable. They require the facilitator to be credible and knowledgeable. They prefer you to get to the point and provide clear instructions, demonstrate the requirements or the process, and provide an opportunity for questioning and clarification. These guys like to be engaged, and you'll see that they like to have a facilitator. So they don't necessarily want to be talked at. They want someone to facilitate their learning. They want to be able to clarify. They want to be able to ask questions. Now, these guys' concentration span is approximately 45 minutes. So we've gone from the baby boomers, which were 1.5 hours, to approximately 45 minutes. And then the next one we move on to is the millennial, or you may also know them as Generation Y. These guys we've been born from 1977 to 1997. They have been around from the 9/11 attacks, community service. They are confident, they're diverse, they have social everything, Google and Facebook. Unfortunately, they have a shorter attention span. However, they're team-orientated, highly visual learners. So these guys need things to happen. They need to have the presentation. They need to have the PowerPoint slides. They need to have different programs engaging them. They want to be engaged. They're educated within a high access to IT, and they don't see the value in knowing, but knowing where to find it. So exactly as Albert Einstein said. They use technology machinery in place of mental and physical stress, and can be untrusting of past experiences. They can concentrate on multiple issues at once. They also prefer clear objectives and standards, and they like to develop self-assessment items. They like you to provide opportunities for group work. They like you to also incorporate technology, create a multimedia environment, and offer chances to multitask, including giving them group projects to complete. However, there must be structure, and learning must be broken down into small, manageable chunks. Provide a little bit of theory and then follow up immediately with the practical, and acknowledge appropriate performance frequently. Their concentration span is approximately approximately 20 minutes. And the last one that we're going to talk about is the Generation Z. So these are the guys that were born after 1997, age 15 and younger. They're optimistic, high expectations. They know all about apps, they have social games and tablet devices. So these guys learn to use a smartphone at a very young age. They have always had access to the internet and sometimes prefer texting and messaging over face-to-face communications. Due to being able to be tech savvy, they absorb tons of information every day as they spend several hours a day either on social media or searching for information on the internet. And the actual time that they spend each day, research shows sometimes between 3 to 5 hours of just searching for information. They enjoy being independent, they are self-confident and autonomous. This generation has used computers for most of their study. They like to watch how-to videos. And I've actually seen, well, I haven't just seen research, I read research when we talk about this generation, they're a multitasker. And what they do is they like to listen to music, they will text, they'll watch TV, they'll use social media, and they'll be actually doing their assessment or their project at the same time. So what these guys do, they actually need to be stimulated. There needs to be quite a bit going on for them to be able to move on with their tasks. They need to be engaged through multiple learning channels where information can be delivered in a variety of ways. Now, the research that I had a look at recently said that a lot of school-aged children are actually watching how-to videos on how to study, which I thought was, quite interesting when we're actually looking at multitasking. They need to feel, hear, see and touch and experience their lessons. They like to learn by doing and seeing. Listening forms a very small part of their actual learning. They will not sit down and let you spoon feed them information. They need to experience it. Their concentration span works slightly differently. If you haven't caught their attention in the first 8 seconds, they will move on to other things. And their average attention span is about 30 seconds. So as you can see from the different generations, all of which you could have in your class, the way that you would facilitate your learning and even the assessment will vary. So as part of the generations, we've had a look at the adult learning principles. We've had a look at the 5 generations working side by side that you'll currently have in 2020. The other one that I want to show you, which I think is really important of professional development, and some people like it and some people don't, is the personality styles or the personality testing. I like to refer to it as personality styles, or I like the 4 temperaments. So what this one's about, personality testing. I'm sure some people have done the DISC or Briggs-Myers testing. There are so many of them out there, and they can become overcomplicated. So the one that I like to do and I like to share with my students talks about the 4 temperaments, and it's actually quite an old one. So this is how they work. So the ancient Greek medical theory of humorism attributed to a disease to imbalance in the 4 body fluids. So when they first started looking at personality styles and 4 temperaments, they used to refer to them as blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm, which sounds really, really interesting in today's times. The Egyptians, the Persians, and the Greek civilizations then categorized the behavior into elements. So then they moved on and said, there are 4 elements. They are water, earth, air, and fire, which I'm sure most people have also heard of. And then we moved on to the Greek philosopher, Hippocrates, who describes the 4 temperaments that are labeled as, and I always have trouble saying this word, and you think I've practiced it a million times. So we've got a choleric, a phlegmatic, a sanguine, and a melancholy. This is how they all relate. So I've just put up a small picture there for you. So the 4 temperaments, and then we also have the introverts and the extroverts. So let me run these through for you really, really quickly, because a lot of people find these interesting. So we have the 4 temperaments, and knowing and understanding people's actions in a very broad base. So we're not going to look at testing someone's personality, or some people refer to it as pigeonholing someone's personality. We're having a look at the 4 temperaments, the 4 main temperaments that most people will display. Now, when we have a look at the personality styles, what we also do is the personality style, depending on where you are in your life, you know, what you may be studying, whether you relate this to work, whether you relate this to home, the actual temperament may change, or the temperament may be spread across more than one temperament. So it's not unusual for someone, when we go through this testing, and it's a very short testing, it's actually a little bit of fun as well, that someone comes out quite equal across all 4 temperaments. So I like to use this activity as a way of just showing people that, you know, we all communicate differently. And sometimes the way we communicate also provokes a different response, or a response that we didn't actually, you know, expect to get from that person. Okay, so let's move forward. So we have a choleric, a phlegmatic, a sanguine, and a melancholic. Now, these can also be attributed to a peacock and an eagle, which I'm sure other people have heard of as well. I like to use the original terms because most people are able to relate to these in terms of research. From there, we also have the extroverts. Now, extroverts are people that derive their energy from externally. So quite often you'll see that they're the ones that are in the crowd that are feeding off other people, get their energy from other people. Introverts, conversely, derive their energy internally from quiet contemplation. So the other reason, let me go back. So let me give you a little bit more detail. A choleric are people who are proud, are extroverted alphas of our species. Now, as I'm going through some of these, I am sure that you'll be able to think of people that you know. I know who this person is. They are leaders and directors. They seek to be in control of situations, to be on top, and to be the best. They use imperative, commanding language. So they will say things like, get me a drink, not can I have a drink. They are firm and forceful in their approach to problems. They believe in tough love and to try to help others by challenging them to prove themselves as they themselves would. They love competition, but they hate to lose. They are extroverted. They're extroverted in the sense that they will meddle in others' affairs and they will speak their mind if they feel it is necessary, rather than minding their own business. They generally respond well to new situations and they'll seek thrills. They seek to prove themselves externally, to show that they are great and that the best at the things that they like. They must prove that they are strong. They believe that it is important to say things how they are. They can be blunt, honest about their opinions rather than sugarcoating them. And quite often you'll hear say, oh, you know, that person was as subtle as a sledgehammer, or they call a spade and a shovel a shovel. So they speak their mind, but often don't mind their speech. So then we have the phlegmatic. The phlegmatic people are meek, submissive introverts who live to please others. Phlegmatics do not act as if they are better than others, but they are very eager to please, and they're quick to give in to others rather than asserting their own desires as their most important. They take the path of least resistance whenever they can. They desperately wish for peace, for everyone just to get along and to avoid conflict at all costs. Because unfortunately, conflict terrifies these people. They do not start it except under maybe extreme circumstances, and they certainly don't provoke it. And they try to diffuse it when it comes up. When forced into an argument, they get very upset and distressed, and they escape rather than trying to claim victory. They have no desire to be a winner, and they only wish for peace. They're terrified of doing things wrong, and they will defer to others to make choices, and will feel upset and pressured if they have to make a decision themselves. And this comes from their inability to see themselves as a leader. They are natural followers and work best when they are told what to do. Now, a sanguine, these people are actually boisterous. They're very bubbly, they're chatty, they're openly emotional, they're social extroverts, they're great motivators. And you'll usually find that sanguines will be actors, they belong in the theatre, they can also be trainers, you know, they're out there to perform. Sanguines find social interactions with faces both familiar and unfamiliar invigorating. This is how they recharge. Even though they sometimes need time alone, it can actually bore them very, very quickly. The more people they're surrounded by, the better they feel. They're not picky about who they get to know. They're happy to know everyone. They enjoy having many, many friends, and they are talkers more than they are listeners. So you'll quite often hear that when someone is referring to a sanguine, they'll say, oh, they could talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles. They are bubbly, they're fun-loving, they're extroverted people's people who are always in the mood for a good time. They are talkative. They speak in a friendly, energetic, and playful kind of way. They are often charismatic, and when interacting with them, you feel like you've known them your whole life. However, they are very emotional, and their emotions can be extreme but fleeting. So they are the sorts of people that'll go, I hate you, I hate you. And then when in a very short period of time, they'll be apologising and expecting that it's all water under the bridge. They're very quick to forgive and to forget. And the last temperament that we're going to cover is the melancholic. Melancholic people are emotional, they're sensitive, and they're perfectionists, but they're also introverts. The defining feature of a melancholic attitude is perfectionism. They are idealists who wish for things to be a certain way, and they will get distressed when they're not. They hold themselves and others to an unrealistic high standards, and they get distressed when these standards are not met. This leads to them to be self-deprecating because they do not meet their own standards and are critical of others because those others sometimes don't meet those standards either. Many melancholics wish to learn and to understand, to know the details of every little thing, because to be ignorant is to stray from perfection. They are not content to just accept things the way they are. They are inquisitive and they ask specific questions in order to come to a clearer understanding. This leads many of them to be over-analytical and neurotic warriors. They tend to argue because they cannot simply let things be if they see that there is a wrong. They argue using reason, evidence, logic, and explanations, delivering analytically or with pleading. They only argue to set wrongs right, rather than to assert dominance. Melancholics are the most introverted of all the temperaments in that they crave time alone and most at ease in their own company. So that is a really quick snapshot of the 4 temperaments. And as you can see, for anyone that's done the DISC or the Myers-Briggs, it isn't actually as complicated. But I thought I'd share that with you because during your professional development and dealing with lots of different types of participants, you will find that you will come across the different temperaments. And sometimes there will be a mixture of the different temperaments. Now, the last important bit about why we capture professional development is, as I jumped through before, is standards for registered training organisations. So under the standard 1, which is clause 1.13 to 1.16, and I'm asking you to memorise that because I may test you at the end of the session, training and assessment can only be delivered by people who have, and as I've covered, the vocational competencies, at least to the level being delivered and or assessed. However, some training packages, and this is just purely for your knowledge because it doesn't apply to you guys, I don't believe, but some training packages will actually stipulate that you need to hold a level higher than the level that you're actually delivering. You also need to have current industry skills directly relevant to the training and assessment that you're providing. And you need to have current knowledge and skills in vocational training and learning that informs your training and assessment. So what does that actually mean? It means you need to have the skills and the knowledge for the course you're delivering. You need to have current industry skills. So whether you're working in a job outside of volunteering or whether you are just volunteering in different organisations. It's also about being current in what the training and the learning space is actually doing. So things like blended learning, the flipped model learning, what does that mean? Using different apps and different programs like Kahoot and Slido to get interaction from all of your participants. Because remember, we've got lots of generations that we could be up with. Okay. The RTO also has a responsibility. So the standards for a registered training organisation says that the RTO needs to ensure that all trainers and assessors undertake professional developments in the fields of knowledge and practice of vocational training, learning and assessment, including competency-based training and assessment. So the RTO must ensure that all trainers and assessors undertake professional development. The standards do not prescribe on how often professional development must occur, that is left up to the registered training organisation to put together. However, they say that it needs to be sufficient to ensure that they are current in their knowledge and skill and vocational training, and simply delivering training and assessment does not constitute professional development. Because I quite often get that question. They'll say, but I'm out here delivering this training, or I'm over at this client's premises and I'm delivering the training. If you are delivering the training and prior you have been inducted into the business and you've been familiarised with, for example, machineries or policies and processes that that company may have, then yes, that can go towards your professional development, but simply delivering the training and assessment does not constitute professional development. And during an ASQA audit, this information will be audited. So professional development logs can be audited, but what's even more important is handing in a professional development log, you actually need to hand in verified evidence to say that that activity did happen. Because for the ones that I suppose have been around long enough or have been involved in compliance audits, quite often you'll get the statement back, if it's not on paper, it didn't happen. So let's have a look at some examples. So some examples of professional development activities include, obviously, participation in courses, workshops, seminars, conferences, or formal learning programs. And guess what? Today's session can go on your professional development register because that's part of your professional development. This can also incorporate workshops outside of SURF. So they could be things like school board meetings. You might have done child safe environments or reporting neglect and abuse. You may have attended conferences on new industry requirements or accreditation in resuscitation council updates, different things like that. Developments in industry journals, research on different techniques. You may have been part of a committee that's helped to develop a new training resource or a new study guide or a new guideline for something. Participation in mentoring, professional associations or other learning networks. Now, this one needs to be taken with a little bit of caution. People quite often say to me, oh, look, I belong to lots of LinkedIn groups and I belong to different Facebook groups and things like that. That can't just be the basis of your professional development. There needs to be a blend of professional development. So if you're only relying on LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups, then I would say you need to take that, you need to have that with a bit of caution, and you need to look in other places for your professional development as well. Professional development through individual research and reading of publications and relevant information. Now, they could be new projects, they could be new developments in the industry. You could be part of an assessment validation committee or part of a group. You may be receiving a review from other trainers and assessors. They may be doing an evaluation. You may have also upgraded your certificate for in training and assessment. So we have the certificate for in training and assessment, which was the 40110, which, as we know, then upgraded in the TAE package that was endorsed in 2016. And we know that the certificates weren't equivalent, so we had to update some of our units of competency in order to get the certificate to be upgraded, or the individual skill sets. You may also be, like I've said, have participation in moderation or validation activities. Moderation, it doesn't seem to be a word that is used that often. However, most people that have done training and assessment for a longer period of time understand moderation as in getting together, having a look at your assessment judgments and making sure that your assessment judgments are consistent across the board. So no matter which assessor has actually been used, the judgment should be the same. Validation activities can take many forms. You can have a look at assessment tools prior to implementation or assessment tools after you've implemented them, having a look at, did they work, did they not work, are there any changes, were they clear, were the instructions to the student clear? This is all part of validation activities, and it's a great experience. Participation in industry release schemes. This usually happens with more formal type industries. So for example, someone that may be a truck driver and isn't able to go back into industry to drive a truck, because not everyone will let you just hop in their truck and go and do what you need to do. They do have, some industries have industry release schemes where insurance is covered, and you know, you're there with a mentor and someone's out there with you, making sure that, you know, nothing goes wrong, or if anything does go wrong, we can actually recover from it. So how do I capture my brilliance? So what we have actually done is we've put together the Trainer Assessor Professional Development Framework, and it's actually a toolkit. So what this toolkit consists of is a Trainer and Assessor Competence Policy. So we go through and we have a look at the policy, and we have a look at everything that the policy encompasses. And then we have a look at the procedure. So if we're looking at capturing our brilliance, what is the procedure that we use to go around that? And what I'll be showing you today is a professional development log, which covers your industry currency. So the industry currency for surf lifesaving here in SA is that you need to go into whatever your space may be in the industry at least twice a year. Your vet currency is a minimum of 4 hours per year. So you need to be able to do something on training and assessment, whether that means upgrading your certificate 4 or some of the units in your certificate 4, being part of validation. You need to add up to at least 4 hours per year. Now, let me show you what that looks like. So let's shine. Professional development activity. First of all, we've got some limits and some evidence that needs to be talked about. So when we go in to fill in our professional development log, there are a couple of fields that we need to have a look at. So the date is really important. You need to put in the date of your professional activity, when it started, and whether it spanned more than 1 day, or whether it was 2 hours or 6 hours or 4 hours, whatever the case may be. If we don't have a date, we can't validate the information. Now, the information is not about people checking up on what people are doing. What happens is during an audit, when ASQA come in and they talk about professional development logs, and they talk about validated evidence, they'll say, well, you've got some evidence, now we need to validate it. We do that with everyone's certificate 4. We do this with your industry qualifications. Doesn't matter what RTO you work for, we have to go through and validate it. It's actually part of the standards. You need to give us the course or the activity. So ensure that the activity is clear and that your activity is actually approved prior to the completion, because there'd be nothing worse than going out and doing a professional activity, and then we realise that it actually doesn't fit into what we need it to fit into. We ask you not to use acronyms, because as you can imagine, the acronyms that are used in surf life might mean something different in transport and logistics, might mean something different in training and assessment. So to make sure that we don't have any confusion with the activities, we ask that we don't use any acronyms and we don't use any words that we've just shortened down. We need to have a provider and organisational name, so ensure you reflect the correct full name of the training provider or the organisation which provided the activity. The duration. Ensure that if the activity you are claiming is a training course, that you include the hours that you attended. So, as an example, what I've put in there is if you were doing the HLT AID 001, which I believe is provide CPR, then that's a 4-hour course. So if that's what you've attended, then you need to put down 4 hours. Then we need some sort of evidence. So whether it's a certificate or a confirmation, this field must show either a certificate, a timesheet, a confirmation email of attendance. Sometimes you'll get the little presenter cards, or you may get a program. Something needs to happen, something that can actually be verified and put on your file. If you are unable to supply confirmation of an industry activity, you must supply the contact person and their contact details, who can be contacted to verify your entry. Now, previously we spoke very quickly about some activities. We've also got some activity limits. So you cannot claim more than the limit set annually. So, for example, if we're talking about participation in courses, workshops, seminars, conferences, or formal learning programs, then there is no limit. You can attend as many as you see fit. Participation in mentoring, professional associations and other learning networks, so industry associations, vet associations, trade shows, networking events, equipment launches, supplier road shows, whatever name they've given to them. There is no limit for those ones either. Personal development through individual research or reading of publications or other relevant information, no more than 2 journals, magazines, or books per year. Because what we have found that sometimes I will get a PD log, not referring to surf lifesaving, but I will get a PD log and I've got 25 YouTube videos on there and I've got 16 journals that give me no more information than that. And one of the things about YouTube videos is that we need to make sure that they're credible YouTube videos, because as we know, anyone can put anything out there. So we say no more than 2 journals, magazines, or books. Participation in moderation of validation activities. Validation participated could be internally or externally. You may be asked to participate as an external person. If that's the case, you can sometimes get a letter from the person, you can get an email of the confirmation of the time and date. There's also participation industry release schemes, so working within the industry, and any other activity approved by the education and training manager or the RTO manager. So if you've got an activity that you don't believe falls into any of these categories, I would encourage you just to make sure that you get it approved first if you want to claim it on your professional development log, especially if it's got a lot of hours attached to it. And like the note says down the bottom, all entries in the professional development log must be verified. Okay, so let's have a look. So what's this going to look like? So what I've done is I've actually gone through and taken the professional development log and I filled it in for myself. So there's 2 of them. One is the industry currency and one is the training and assessment currency. So as you can see, trainer's name is myself, position I'm the compliance analyst. I have a start date, which is, I mean, I'm being a bit clever here, from the 1st of January until the 20th of December. So it's roughly showing a whole span of a whole year. But for you guys, it may be a little bit differently. Your dates may be slightly different. Now, the professional development activities I've completed, as you can see, I've put some dates in there. Now, what I like to do in the background, personally, as a trainer and assessor, because obviously I need to keep my professional development log if I need to go in and do any sort of training, the RTO will ask me for it. So what I do in the background is I keep a spreadsheet. So every time I've read an article that is of interest or I've learned it or I can apply it to something that I'm going to be training, I note it down in my spreadsheet. And then regularly I come through and update my professional development log. That way I can ensure that I've got the greatest mix of activities across my professional development log. That isn't a requirement. You don't need to do that. I'm just saying that is something that I like to do. So for me, being a compliance analyst, one of the things that I looked at doing was the RTO audit requirements. It was provided by compliance professionals. It was 3 hours. And the column here, it says relationship to area of expertise or unit of competency. Now, I could put 2 things in here. I could put in here as a compliance analyst, this goes towards the compliance side that I need. But what it also does, it relates to the unit BSB AUD 503, which is leader quality audit, because this one, RTO audit requirements, was all about participating and leading an audit. Now, the next entry down is the 20th of February in this case, and it's supporting development of adult language literacy and numeracy skills. Now, I've put in there the ACSF and the CSFW. Now, I did say we're not going to use acronyms. However, the actual certificates that are attached to this have these both in full. The provider organisation name was RTO Professionals. This one took me 3 days. Now, this one relates to the unit TAELLN 501, which is support the development of adult language literacy and numeracy skills. And the reason that I would put this one on here, even though I'm a compliance analyst, is if you can remember to the beginning, as a trainer and assessor, I specialise in language literacy and numeracy skills. So this one actually applies to industry. And then for the next 3 entries, we've got compliance software, does it work? And that's some compliance requirements. It's about keeping policies and procedures done. Then we're looking at April, black and white, no grey here. Quite often something that's referred to us compliance people as being very black and white. Compliance professionals, 2 hours. Now this one refers to the standards for RTOs. So as you can see that those 2 entries and the one below it don't relate to a unit of competency. they actually relate to the compliance side of my job. I couldn't find a unit of competency that they related to. And then the last one is what we would consider to be like a journal entry, which is actually an ASQA update. Now, to reference an ASQA update, I have to reference that it is an update. It's the June edition. And the bit that I read was the rapid review of our regulatory practices and processes. And there was 24 recommendations that came out of that regulatory review. Now, it took me an hour, and that refers back to my compliance and auditing. Now, you will see the last column on the right-hand side talks about a certificate or confirmation attached. So like I said, it doesn't always have to be a certificate, but I have actually ticked the yes box because I am supplying something for every single one of these entries. And the last one that we will have a look at is your vet currency. So here, once again, my name, compliance analyst, and the dates. Here we've got some other entries. So here I've got a validation workshop, and this one was run by the validation experts. It was for 8 hours, and it relates to the unit TAE ASS 403, which is Participate in Assessment Validation. The next one down is the review of the TAE update, because there are some updates coming. Now, this one here was with the Industry Skills Council, but as you can see, it doesn't actually relate to any of the units of competency. It refers to the whole training package. So there are some update requirements. And then I've talked about some assessment. Now, the assessment units, I've listed them all down there. I've got a webinar on e-learning. That was a trainer presentation. So that was actually about presenting online. So it was more about the presentation and facilitation skills. And the last one, the 16th of the 6th, is capturing your brilliance. So that was for an hour, and it's for a trainer and assessor professional development requirement. And as you can see down the bottom, in the last row across, I've got the total number of hours. You will need a minimum of 4, and just those couple of activities added up to 29 hours. Okay, so what's the requirement? There is a requirement to submit your professional development log annually, and there is help and support available to you. So having said all of that, that there is help and support available to you, my next slide says, let's talk. Because this presentation and everything that I've got to tell you, I have said. So I'm happy to take some questions and hopefully help to clear up any question that someone may have. So I'll give it back to you, Kate.
No worries, just trying to get my video to start again. There we go. I'm just quickly flicking through the chat to see. I think people were having some sound issues. Other than that, should be fine. So has anyone got any questions?
So Kate, our professional development, we have to keep a log every year from now on, do we?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Cool.
Can I just say that the professional development for trainers and assessors, this isn't something that's new with these standards. This has always been a requirement. So one of the things that, anything that you do within SURF, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, so any of the, do you call them pre-qualifications, pre-assessment? What do you call it prior to the season?
Skills maintenance.
Skills maintenance, that's it. So all of that sort of thing, that'll already be captured because that's an internal SURF thing. Am I correct?
Yeah, so skills maintenance will obviously, when you do skills maintenance, that's all recorded on SurfGuard. So that's definitely recorded.
Yeah, so this is more about the activities that you will be doing, you know, outside that SURF may not necessarily know about, or things like that. So the things that you actually do internally will already be captured.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and reiterate that. So all of the things that we plan and make available to members, so whether that's pre-season updates, skills maintenance, these types of opportunities will be captured. It is really more about the things that you're doing that we aren't aware of, just so that we are capturing that. As Monika said, it is a requirement for us, and we've not necessarily been great at capturing all the great things that everyone is doing. So This is something new, I guess, but we hope that it's really not that onerous, given that most of what you do is already being captured. The bit that we will continue to focus on over the coming years is more the vet requirements. We already are well across industry requirements. It's more holding sessions like this that talk about things we don't always talk about, and then being able to capture that as far as your vet requirements.
Any other questions, queries, issues, concerns?
Oh, it seems like it's a fair bit of work for a volunteer training, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of obligation on a trainer now to maintain their standards and everything. What are your thoughts on that? I guess that's part of being accredited. Maybe we shouldn't be accredited.
There's always that debate. And look, there is a review going on nationally. And so we are looking at as each state is involved in a national review. So we are looking at whether or not it is the right pathway for us. We've been an RTO for a long time, but there is requirements that we have to adhere to being accredited. So who knows what the outcome will be of that. And it certainly will not affect this current season coming, but we will keep you up to date. I am on that review group. So yeah, I guess watch this space. We are trying to, I guess weigh up, and we have an external consultant looking at the benefits of being an RTO, but also then the additional requirements and burden that is placed on our members. So, it is a balancing act that I'm pleased to say there is some due diligence in this space, and it's not being taken lightly, I guess.
And for this process, I mean, you're not alone. We will, if you are finding it onerous, then reach out and ask for some help, because it shouldn't be onerous. We need to make sure that it's something that's fairly, straightforward and easy for you to do.
Okay. Sorry. From my understanding on what you're talking about professional development, if you're a trainer or an assessor, you'll generate most of the actual development or the hours in just updating your skills anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, so updating your skills in terms of training and assessment. I know that when I spoke to Belinda previously, I know that SURF will be looking at offering a workshop on the training and assessment side of things at least once a year. But we've got to be really careful about how we capture that development, because simply being a trainer and assessor does not constitute professional development. So, that can sometimes be a little bit tricky. When I say that. So, if you are doing some development or you are doing some training in something that you had to get development for in order to, facilitate, for example, then yes, that is something that you can capture. But if it's just, so for example, if I can put it back on myself, so if I was just running workshop in language literacy and numeracy, and I haven't actually done any development in any of the new language literacy and numeracy protocols or anything that they do, I couldn't count that training and assessment as development, even though I did run it for different organisations, because I didn't actually learn anything new, if that makes sense. But if I had to develop in order to run for a group from a different cultural background, for example, then yes, I would count that.
But if you're doing, you were saying about proficiencies earlier, if you're a trainer and you actually become proficient in that award for that season's training, is that classified as professional development? So you become competent, or you've actually been updated on the actual any changes in that award, that becomes professional development, doesn't it?
I'm going to jump in here and say yes, because whenever we roll out anything for pre-season updates, there's usually something that has changed in our award or techniques or whatever it is. So for example, obviously there's the new bronze coming out this year, so that's going to be a significant update for us. So the thing is, I guess, for people is we are actually doing all of this. It's just about capturing what we do. So if you're doing it within the surf environment, we're already capturing it for you. It's really just capturing all of those other things. So I don't see it necessarily as being too onerous. We are going to provide lots of opportunities. And now with, you know, us being able to utilize these online platforms, we're hoping we can make some of these opportunities, like an hour here and there, a bit more obtainable without it taking too much of your time, to make sure that we keep up to date.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Peter Kerrison here from Moana. Is anybody out there?
We can hear you.
Ah, good. Yeah. No, I was just going to add to it. Like, I work for Australian Red Cross, and of course we have to do our quarterly, you know, what we've done, you know, and it's no different to what we're doing here. And of course, I put everything in that I do with surf lifesaving, as well as if I'm doing, you know, like an update with Epilepsy Australia or Diabetes SA or whatever. So it's just sort of one of these things that everybody's got to kind of think of is like, you know, our PD is like what we're doing in surf is our PD. But if we're doing it with anybody else, then we just really got to just sort of log it all in, you know, if that makes any sense. All right.
Thank you for that, Pete. Yeah, it does.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Kate, got a question.
I like how they're all directed at me.
Well, no, this is to anyone really, but where I'm based, we're rural remote, and we have to be fairly self-sufficient. We notice that we get more people in there with learning disabilities and more special needs. So we had a speech pathologist come in and talk to trainers and assessors and talk about learning disabilities and way to develop things to improve our training and assessing, and that logging that can be classed as professional development.
Yes, let me swing back to Belinda or Monika for that one.
Monika can jump in after, but absolutely, and well done. Like, that is, you know, fantastic PD, and, you know, something that as a state we should also look at providing clubs, but well done to you, and yeah, fabulous. So I don't know if Monika wants to jump in there.
Look, that's great. That's fabulous PD, because, you know, it's something that's relevant to you, something that you need. And, you know, if there obviously, if it was just like a meeting or a session, there would be no, you know, certificate of participation or anything else like that. But if you've got a like a diary entry, like an appointment entry or anything, even in Outlook, printing that out and submitting that as evidence, you know, if that's all we've got, that's all we've got, but at least we've got something. So
even a general report that other people can use as well as proof of their attendance and that as well.
Fabulous. Yep. And don't forget attendance sheets either. If you've signed an attendance sheet for anything, ask the trainer, can I copy it? I don't want other people's details on there. I just want mine. So, you know, fabulous. Good on you.
So I'm retired, so I'm no longer in the workforce, so I'm not seeking to do outside training of any kind. Will I be able to achieve my required hours, Belinda, within a normal surf year?
Yeah, we will make sure we provide those opportunities just like this. So we've got 4 sessions, you know, through this conference. So we'll be looking at doing some sort of conference every year, and also looking at other opportunities, you know, and things might come from the membership that, you know, it could be the example that was just given around working with learners with a disability or whatever it could be. We could look to be running other sessions that are going to benefit the club trainers and assessors, to make our members' experience through the programs that we run far better. So, you know, we will try to make sure where possible we give you all of those opportunities, but some people will already have those opportunities outside of surf as well. So, you know, not all of them will be mandatory if you've already captured all of those hours, but it will provide opportunities for people like you, Elaine, that, you know, don't have other opportunities potentially outside of surf.
Anyone else? Feel free to flick through questions, email us or ring us. We're certainly open to that if you don't want to voice it here or you think of something later. Yeah, so if no one else has got anything. No?
Just a quick, sorry.
I just saw Susan's comment, and that's good to hear, Susan. The short sessions, I think we've had a few people comment that these shorter sessions are a little bit easier to manage rather than a whole day. I'm sure different people have different feelings about that, but we're certainly hearing that, so that's good to hear.
Yep. I have a question to Monika. You're referring to other outside of the training area, such as attending board meetings and actually that which are related to surf or related to training. That would be covered under professional development?
Yes, as long as you can make it relate back to your position. So, you know, so for example, being in compliance, I'm also the secretary that looks after the policies and procedures for my youngsters' school. So that relates to my position. So when I talk about board meetings, you know, school board meetings, could be community, could be sporting clubs, depending what sort of role that you hold. I mean, even administration, as a trainer and assessor, we all know that there are a lot of forms to fill in and things like that. So, you know, administration. So if you are taking minutes or, you know, you're writing coaching programs for the youngsters, whatever, look, I would rather that you capture all of it than be unsure and just leave it off.
Thank you.
I was in the middle of typing to Mark's question on the chat, but I'll say it. We are taking attendance for these sessions, and obviously you've registered as well, so we've got that down to say that you've attended also. So we've had another good turnout tonight, so it's really good that everyone's jumping on board with these. So thank you very much, Monika. Has anyone else got any other questions?
Okay, I was just going to jump in so the guys could find out when they need to fill out these PD logs, whereabouts can they find them or access them?
We can put them on the portal. That's usually where we put some stuff. And if anyone's having trouble with the portal, I can email them. That's fine.
I'm just, hang on, having some technical issues.
I'm glad it's not just me.
Can't seem to get my screen back up, but I'm assuming you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just looking like I'm talking to my email. We also will send all of this information out. We're not just going to land this on you at this and then not follow up with some further communication. So we will send all this information out. There will be other information that accompanies it. So this isn't, you're just supposed to walk away from here and then just suddenly know what to do. So watch this space and we'll continue to engage with you as the season gets closer.
Anyone else? Toolkits, everyone sort of has a break and then thinks of something.
Kate, do you just want to remind them about the next session, what's coming up?
Yeah, so on Saturday, 10:30, you should all have the links because they're all on the same page. We've got Damien, who is from the SA Ambulance. So he'll be talking to us about how our training helps them to be able to do their job when they come to our call outs for them. So that should be quite interesting. So yeah, so if you know of someone who hasn't registered, pass it on. I keep sending reminders. We still do have a few trainers and assessors who haven't registered, and we are using the next 2 sessions for pre-season updates for ARTC and IRB. And the reason for that is not much has changed in those 2 areas. So therefore, to help gain some more PD and whatever, this is used in place of that. And it means too that you're not coming out to 2 things, one probably not really relevant because nothing's changed. So just trying to make it a bit easier on everybody. So if you're a chief instructor or you're a trainer within your club and you know people who are ARTC trainers or IRB trainers, make sure that they're registered, and that will count towards their pre-season update.
Okay. So, Kate, if you can't attend the Saturday session, can we watch it on the video?
Yeah, so we are recording everything, and they will be made available once all the sessions are finished. So I'm not releasing them bit by bit. I'll just put them all out there and send a link, because obviously they're going to be too big to send through emails. But the ones that count for pre-season update, and if someone didn't attend, they will just have to answer 4 or 5 questions after watching it, so that we can ensure that you have actually watched it.
Sure.
So, yeah, just to make sure that we capture everybody that way.
Cool.
Anyone else?
And if you haven't got your hat yet, Kate posted a heap today. So hopefully after this, everyone, well done. I see a few of you. Yeah, obviously we plan to hold a big conference and have all sorts of stuff happening, but we thought at least we could send you out a hat and you had something to show for your attendance besides your PD log. So yeah, that was just a little thing we could easily do in this situation.
All right, well, I guess we'll leave it there, and hopefully we'll see you all on Saturday. Once again, thank you very much, Monika.
Thank you.
And yeah, any more questions or information, please flick through an email, give us a call. But like Belinda said, we will be sending out some information. It's not just going to be thrown on you blindly. So yeah, so thank you again, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you all Saturday.
Thanks.
Thank you. Fantastic session. Bye.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Yep.
Thank you.